Hello, and welcome to another weekly digital strategy chat brought to you by Denver Data Web. As a digital strategy company, we help our clients overcome their unique challenges with a goals-focused approach to web development, web design, and digital marketing. My name is David Zonka, digital strategist with Denver Data Web, and today we have some of the team. First off, Sarah, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Sarah Joswiak. I'm the digital marketing analyst at Denver Data Web.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. And also we have Tom.
Tom DeGurlia, president here at Denver Data.
All right, well, thank you both, and thank you everybody who joins us today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to chime in on either the channels that we're live streaming to today. Otherwise, we're going to dive into our topic. I think it's a pretty cool one because it's something that a lot of people out there at different companies, organizations are thinking about all the time, I'm sure. How much should a company spend on their marketing? A lot of times here on these chats, we talk about tactics and strategies and things, but certainly how much you spend on your marketing, that's an important strategy to think about as well. In my experience, when I talk to so many different people at different organizations and companies out there, sometimes people think, hey, I don't need to spend anything on marketing because marketing doesn't do anything for my business, does it? Other folks are trying to figure out how much they should budget for. They know they need to do marketing, but how much should they put into it? How much is going to help them get actual successful results, get a return on their investment? So I really see it as a pretty big topic. I know Tom and Sarah have thought quite a bit about it, so we're going to dive into today because I think this could help a lot of people. And where would we start with this conversation? I think we should probably kind of start from the beginning. What kinds of companies even need marketing? Because if you think you don't need marketing, you spend zero. But if you do need marketing, that leads to that bigger question. So yeah, what kinds of companies need marketing? Tom, what do you think about this?
The quick answer is any company that wants to grow or really to make money, you can make it a certain distance, on networking and even for a small company that's bootstrapping, they are doing marketing. They're just doing guerrilla marketing, meaning networking and things that regular humans do with their day. But there is a point where you've reached the scale where your time is better spent serving your customers and you can spend your profits on driving new customers.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, guerrilla marketing is not an ape or primate throwing bananas at you to get your attention. We're talking about marketing where you're just kind of, fast and loose, making some stuff happen.
Solo entrepreneur putting together their own website. That isn't necessarily recommended, but there is a stage of business where that's your only option, or where that makes perfect sense.
And is there, would you say there's any kind of distinction, between, whether a company or brand, is your brand need marketing, or is the company in general just, holding, what is there any kind of distinction there that really matters whether it's going to be important or
not? Whether you would do it at all or not?
Yeah.
I think that there's a strong case for always marketing. I think that you'd be crazy not to. And my gut is that people are secretly marketing, even if they don't know it. They're just using less effective tactics that they're executing themselves.
That does remind me of conversations I've had. Sarah, looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah, you can finish first.
Cut me off here in a moment, but the point about people doing marketing and not realizing it. I've recalled talking to companies that are like, oh yeah, we don't do any marketing. We need some help with our website, but we don't do marketing. I'm like, well, I mean, you're kind of doing marketing, whether you realize it or not. You may not want to call it that, but that is what it is, because a website is a pretty key piece of marketing in almost every scenario. Sarah, what do you think?
So David, you mentioned brand and how that might factor into marketing. And it's interesting that we bring that up regarding budget. Tom, you often mention how having a brand may help the actual marketing process. So would you suggest that people who have a company but not necessarily a brand invest in their brand development before rolling that into marketing?
That is a much bigger question that a branding person would probably differ, or would have more information to add. But generally speaking, marketing works for you whether you have a brand or not. And if you're, and I would tend to say that everybody would benefit from having a brand, because a brand is what, even if you're in a commodity business, distinguishes you from everybody else in the pack. But I would say that whether you have a brand or not, a good marketing strategy should be a component of your business, unless you don't want to grow or you don't have a way to grow. People, I guess one example of people that are not ready to market are people who have no intention of growing, that they don't want more work, or they're already at capacity through the foreseeable future that wouldn't benefit them.
There's bound to be some problems with that mindset, I imagine.
Absolutely.
I mean, sir, things are great now, but past performance doesn't necessarily predict future performance. What happens when that pipeline dries up or the company changes, huh?
Yeah, I would say you want to hedge your bets at the very least.
So signs your company might be ready for marketing, then, that I guess we could spin that around, looking at from the other side of that is, like you were just talking about, is maybe you don't have as much business coming in as you would like, or maybe you have capacity to grow and you want to grow. Are those some key signals there?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first signal is that you're too busy doing your work, working for customers. That's usually your best sign that your time is better spent serving your customers than doing something that someone else does really well, like us, for example. But the other signals are you are starting to turn a profit. Usually once you get to a point of even a modest profit, you've got something you can roll back into marketing, and there are typically some techniques that still might be more bootstrapping before you're ready to engage an agency, but you're well on track at that point. The first month you start making money, you should start thinking about how you're going to roll it back into making more.
What about when a company is really just starting off and they really can't afford marketing? Would you still consider it finding some way to make that an investment or doing some bootstrapping? I'm just curious about that. If they really don't have the money to put in for it, what do you do then?
That's a common circumstance, and startups are what come to mind. But you also have companies that just simply aren't profitable at the moment, and that is a tough situation. And the answer, there are really only two answers. One is that you get investment. If you have revenue goals that you want to meet and you're not on track to meeting, and you have capacity that you need to fill, those revenue. I'm sorry, Sarah. What was your question? I lost track of right mid-sentence what I was trying to say.
Just tips on people who don't have the money to put in right away. How should they invest in marketing or find a way to do so? And if so, what are some tips getting
They should. So if in fact they have access to any kind of funding, marketing is where you would want to put that funding, because that's one way that you're going to grow to that level. But by all means, when you're that small, to the extent that you're effective at doing this, taking on some of those marketing tactics yourself, it's a good exercise early on with a company to have to define who you are, which means your first website is probably a good exercise just for defining, helping you figure out, who you are. Yes, there's always a reason to invest. Some people can't, and in those cases, you have to bootstrap.
So one of your mottos, Tom, is that marketing is an investment, not an expense, and it seems like you just explained why right there.
Yes, that's correct. When customers go, that seems like an awful lot of money. Almost always I go, well, if you knew that it was going to be successful, would it seem like a lot of money? They're like, well, of course not. They'd go get some money somehow. So everybody, once they know that it's an investment, there's nobody that wouldn't go and mortgage grandma's farm or whatever they can do to get the money.
Absolutely.
When I have to buy a new water heater, it doesn't really feel like I'm investing in my house. But when I get my house repainted and some really nice, classy colors on the outside, it does, because it's helping resale value and stuff like that. Now, I bought a really expensive water heater, so I'd like to think, somebody's going to see whoa, top of the line water heater, buy this place.
I was just going to say that, David. You that's an investment.
They all are, right? So, I get there's probably some folks out there who think, spending money on marketing, we're just an expense. But man, if there's anything you're putting into your company that's got to feel like an investment, it would be marketing, I would say, because you're literally investing in your future.
Well, and if your marketing isn't getting you any, if it's not an investment, you should rethink your marketing, or who's helping you with it, because that is all that it's intended to be.
The mindset is not, you should stop doing marketing. That, if it's not working, we should stop marketing. No, the mindset should be, if it's not working, rethink how you're doing your marketing.
Absolutely.
Not all marketing is equal.
Yeah. What I like to say is you may not get what you pay for, but you definitely don't get what you don't pay for.
Oh, that's a good distinction.
I'd like to invite you to the concept known as begging choosers, Tom. Begging choosers. They're out there. There's a lot of them. It's like, I'd really like this thing for free, and I'm really upset that you're not giving it to me. Talk about that. So yeah, well, some folks are ready for marketing. Some may not. They probably still need to be doing some kind of marketing. They may have to use some really creative tactics to get that rolling. Some of that may be how they budget or do some things themselves. Well, when you have a budget or you're trying to budget for marketing, I imagine it's going to be different for everybody depending on where they're at in their company's life cycle, right? I mean,
Yes,
you
sir.
got startups and you got, they've been around for a few years, and you got established companies. I mean, how does that look? What's that picture like?
The formula that I've ascertained, and I went through a fair amount of research because this question has come up constantly since I've started in business. What should we spend on marketing? Or what should we spend on our website? Those kind of questions. The SBA there's a wide variety of information out there, much of which is disinformation as far as I can tell. But the SBA, they recommend if you're a company under 5 million in gross revenue, that you spend between 10 and 12% of your profit. I'm sorry, between 7 and 8% of your profit, or I'm sorry, between 7 and 8% of your gross revenue, or up to 50% of your profit, which is a pretty big number. And that is, and that is something that they're applying to both small businesses and large.
An SBA, that's like small business.
Yes, I'm sorry,
right?
Correct. And there was a variety of other resources, but they all kind of come in there, and it really is, and it's really a factor of both of those things. That every company has revenue, every company that's profitable has revenue, but you are confined by the smallest of those two because you only have the profit to spend, and so you have to pick the lower. If you are aiming for a goal that you haven't attained yet, a revenue goal you haven't attained yet, you would pick your budget based on that revenue goal, and based on the profit potential for your goals. So it takes both into account. I guess it's a short answer.
I wonder how much that actually happens out there.
I think it happens none of the time, but from my research, it looks like the most successful companies do it always, and it's exorbitant. If you look at Coca-Cola, which is kind of an extreme example, they are in a very competitive space. All they sell is sugar and water and aluminum cans and shipping. That is really their entire product. It is entirely a commodity, except for their brand. But because their production costs are so low, because the resale cost is so high, their profit margin is so high, they've got a lot of money they can spend on marketing to make sure that they're the product that everybody wants to drink. Mm-hmm. And so in their example, their cost of doing business, the cost of the product, may be a third of what they make in revenue, meaning that they are 2/3, that it's 2/3 profit margin. However, they'll spend another third of that. They'll spend half of that profit on marketing.
Do you think that might change over time depending on where you're in the life cycle? Like, it might start out in one place and then change. And I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of factors.
There are, and it's also one of the big factors is how much you can grow. That you have to, that you don't want to go and invest in marketing that might get you more work than you need. And that's a real concern. If you can't scale up fast enough, that would make you think twice about having too aggressive of a campaign.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, they know that they've got roughly unlimited capacity to grow, and so they can dump money into marketing because they know that they can expand that model very quickly.
They need more humans to be born. They get more customers, right?
Exactly.
Expand into other continents. I think it's
you bring up a good point, because as the company grows and starts to take on the bulk of the market share, as they these huge companies like Coca-Cola start to really become a leader in the space, it becomes incrementally more and more expensive to capture those last few drops of market share. Very expensive, and yet they do spend. Within reason, they'll spend till they can't justify it any longer. Meaning Coca-Cola is paying a lot of money to have the last few people drink a Coke.
The last two people on the planet, Tom. We're
Yeah, the
talking
last
about
few people, right?
apocalyptic scenarios.
Yeah, they couldn't afford to make the last two people on the planet do it.
I can see the billboard, at the end of the world. There's 5 people left, and they all drink Coke. I think we won the soda wars.
Totally. 4 out of 5 of humans alive.
There's so many of those types of movies these days. What a rosy period in history. Well, I imagine like having an established brand like theirs is affecting their marketing budget and strategy, as you kind of touched on. Like, they're big, they've got a lot of money to work with. I gather like a startup, they don't have like a very established brand. Sarah,
Right.
you mentioned
Brand
brand
takes
earlier.
time, right.
Sorry,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. We're just having a discussion, really. But on the flip side of that, so like Coca-Cola is huge, and they have a lot of resources, and they've got a lot of penetration to the markets all around the world. People and drinking their products. For a startup, if they don't have a strong brand, I mean, I just have to assume that's going to affect what they do.
Absolutely, yeah. It's as everybody in business knows, it is very tough as a startup because you're up against people that are established that are very motivated to not see you succeed. That you're at a position of no leverage at that point in your business career. Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to, again, that's where the creative solutions come into play. That said, though, it is also much that there are other advantages to being a small business that give you an edge over some of the bigger guys. Not the Coca-Colas. That would be a tough market to enter. But certainly in our business, there is our cost of that we can provide services to customers for less than a big organization, because the cost of doing business gets very high as you grow.
Overhead, right?
Additionally, one thing I want to mention about the branding versus marketing budget is money is time. So when you have a brand, you have the slogans and you have imagery and you have, catchphrases that you're going to say that you can pull and organize in different ways to create different types of campaigns. And just having that laid out or having that structured ahead of time, it saves a lot of that time in building those types of things. So in many ways, branding can be very expensive, but it can save you on your marketing budget over time so that you can allocate that money to promotions or things like that, rather than the actual time building the campaigns.
Right. Yeah, and I think in my calculations, for the purpose of my calculations, branding fell under the umbrella of marketing, but that doesn't really change anything, I guess.
But it's also the type of thing that can be used over and over again.
Absolutely, so right.
Take the time and the money and the energy to build those things, and then you can rearrange them in different ways to bring in that same audience over and over again and show them the same brand and the same ideas in different ways to pull them in. And I guess that target audience would be part of the branding process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're building a perception of this thing that makes you unique, one of a kind, the only person to go to.
Yeah.
So one of those figures that you mentioned, Tom, earlier is somebody's recommendations about percentages of gross revenue. Others were portions of net profit to invest in there or something like that. What I'm getting is that that might change over time, based on your marketing budget versus your probability, that sort of thing. And like a startup, I'm guessing there's scenarios where they might push the boundaries on like how much of that profit is being driven back into their marketing for a growth strategy standpoint. I mean, even like big companies, I guess, it's one of the things that like Amazon does is, they don't make any profit. They just reinvest everything, right? And so all these investors buying into their stocks and stuff, it's all about the potential down the road and how rapid their growth is. So marketing for growth, I just have to assume it's going to affect profitability pretty remarkably.
Yeah. You could very quickly chew up all your profits, which is why profit is a factor. Is that really is the actual money coming in the door that you have to work with.
Mm-hmm. So it's probably going to change over time, but I think Sarah, you made some good points, like having your brand established already, all that stuff figured out. Like those are things that maybe you don't have to continuously invest as much. Like it just seems like there's foundational things you have to get in place, and once you do, that money can shift and your budget can be apportioned to other things that are driving more and more growth for potential future profitability, right? As it's bringing in more business, more revenue. It's a nice little beneficial cycle there, right?
Exactly. And in that way, you can see how putting in that time can help things change over time. Where when you're building a brand, you may have a very small amount of money left to actually promote that. And then once it's built and established, you can allocate more of your budget to putting it out there and investing in more reach. And then you can see just from there how the continual cycling of budget moves forward to reach more and more people.
Positive feedback loop, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I imagine everybody in that kind of position to figure out, how much should I spend on marketing? Assuming they get past the question of should I do marketing? So I feel like we covered that, but they wonder how much should we spend on it? Then the next kind of question that ultimately come up, and probably from the people who are the ones writing the checks for said marketing, is how much they can expect to get a return on that investment into marketing. I mean, Tom, is that something that can even really be reasonably calculated?
In some ways, you can certainly bound it and get a sense for what's possible and what is likely. But it is it's a statistics game to some degree. Yeah, but you can. I mean, first and foremost, if you know that you don't have the uncertain capacity, you know that there's that you have an upper limit on what you can get in return. So that's and that doesn't really give you the great answer. People ask us that all the time, and there is no way to promise that somebody's going to make money, nor is there any way to promise that, because part of the equation falls in the lap of our customer, the person paying for the marketing. If they don't use that marketing to their advantage, meaning, God forbid, they don't call the leads back, or they have a supply chain problem that they saw coming and didn't take care of, and now they can't serve these customers. That's the biggest area where you'll lose money. If you have a good strategy and a team that can serve that strategy, in my experience, it's very rare that we can't come up with a way to make them money. It is always an investment, or they don't stick with us.
And it's bound to be a little bit trickier depending on the type of marketing. I mean, there's not just like do marketing, done, right? I mean, like marketing is very nuanced. There's different approaches, different ways you do it, different outcomes and objectives. What's one of the things that's neat about paid media like Google ads and stuff like that, where you can get very granular data about click-through rates versus your budgets and cost per acquisition, stuff like that. You start factoring, all right, well, we have this click budget for these ads, and it costs this amount per click, and it takes this many clicks before somebody actually fills out the form. And our sales close rate on those is this percentage. And this is how much each of those deals is worth for us. I mean, all of a sudden you can start doing a lot of math to figure out, all right, so this is kind of our return on this investment in the marketing. If you follow that trail of math, that's pretty neat.
Yes, you can absolutely calculate ROI, and you can use those calculations to drive where you focus your budget further.
But there's other types of marketing, right? I mean, we talk about like demand generation and investment into your brand and other things. Like it has a contributory effect on sales and your marketing impact, but attribution for those things isn't nearly as wide extent, I would imagine, nearly as easy to do or even appropriate sometimes. Like it's just important. I suppose you can do things like do some surveys like, hey, I get these all the time. I go on YouTube and it's like, which of these brands are you familiar with, right? Thank you, Google, for these fun little marketing surveys. But but there you go, right? It's like, sometimes I feel it's easier to get a sense for the potential return on your investment and how it's tracking. But I suppose at the end of the day, a lot of that comes down to your KPIs, your key performance indicators that you assign to your marketing and how that fits your broader strategic goals.
Which certainly you always have.
That's
Sometimes
right.
it seems almost tedious to have to come up with those and track those and pay attention to those. But that's going to give you the most insight into what you're doing with your marketing and what you should continue doing and how you should apply that reinvestment.
Right. Yeah. If you don't know what's working, or if it is not working at all, you might just keep wasting money.
So when somebody asks, like, how much should I spend on marketing? A good question to add in there is like, do you have a good way to know if your, if your marketing can help you? And if not, that's probably part of the broader marketing strategy. And that's certainly what we do for all of our clients is understand your goals, what are your constraints, so we can make sure you have a strategy that helps you achieve those goals in a way that's sustainable. Because if you can't sustain your marketing, it's hard to make that math line up, right?
Right. It's all about sustainability in business. That's you're going the wrong direction. If you're going the wrong direction if you're losing money.
The beginning of every one of these chats, we mentioned that we have a goals-focused approach to digital marketing, web development, web design.
And everything we do is measurable.
Yeah.
Right, because that tells you when you should start, or it's not sorry start, but when you should stop, or if you should change. We mentioned that earlier. Like, if it's not working and people think, oh, well, I don't want to spend on marketing because it doesn't work for me. Well, what you were doing might not have been working before, but if you measure that, then you change. Sarah, I gather, every month, for our clients, like we're probably changing stuff all the time. I mean, some stuff is working, but isn't like testing a pretty big piece of our marketing strategy?
Absolutely. Yeah. That not even just testing, but the data in general will often tell you what to test or what to eliminate. But yeah, we do a lot of A/B testing for that reason, because you may come up with an idea and you don't know if it's worth spending the time and money and investment. So yeah, A/B testing and just analyzing the data critically on a regular basis. Like I said, it can kind of be boring or tedious in theory, but once you start looking at it, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, if you're a data geek, you love this stuff.
We're in the green numbers club. I like green numbers.
Even if you're not, that data, it's profit, and it's especially if it's your company, it can feel very self-serving once you understand that data, to know like these kind of people like this and these kind of people like my company, and it's fun to look at once you understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and it's very deep, but it's still understandable by everybody the way I see it, and there's nobody that couldn't use it.
Well, good stuff. And thank you, Blake, for chiming in there. We'll catch you at the next digital strategy chat as well. Any closing thoughts, Tom, on what to spend on your marketing?
Not really, other than if you're having. I would love to get some questions if anybody has specific questions, so we can address those in a future session. That's my thought. But no closing thoughts other than I'd love to go through some case studies, because that would make much more sense.
Well, that could be a really great next digital strategy chat. So I would say, marketing can be a long road. It's really a quick thing, but the value of it compounds over time. That's certainly true. So keep at it. And thank you, everybody, tuning in today to another one of our Friday digital strategy chats. We have these every week. Most of the time, holidays and other things, barring that, these are a very regular thing, and we talk about different topics every time. So be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on our YouTube channel. Also, check us out on denverdata.com, our website. There's a lot of great tutorials, resources, and tips to how to get more out of your marketing strategy. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.